The Fourth War of the Diadochi ended with the collapse of the Antigonid Empire and its partition among the rest of the Successors. This event marked the traditional endpoint of the Wars of the Diadochi. However, not all was settled after Antigonos' death. His son, Demetrios Polyaketes, was still roaming the eastern Mediterranean and had become king of Macedon. Keen to pick up where his father left off, Demetrios was resolved to battle his way through Greece and beyond in a bid to restore the Antigonid Empire. Moreover, this was not all. Lysimachos and Seleukos would soon end up butting heads, as the former wished to expand and maintain a sphere of influence, while the latter wished to become king of the world, much like Alexander once had. In this culminating episode of the Wars of the Diadochi, we will investigate these final battles, the fight for Demetrios' control over Macedon, his eventual fate, and the war between Lysimachos and Seleukos for control of Macedon. These will be the catalysts for the birth of the Hellenistic world. Welcome to our final episode on the Wars of the Diadochi, covering the final events of dynastic struggle. This video is sponsored by our YouTube members and patrons, who get 2 exclusive videos weekly, not available anywhere else, for their kind support of our channel. You can join their ranks to watch more than 160 videos, including our series on the Pacific War, Punic Wars, Persian Wars, Spanish War of Succession, Russo-Japanese War, North African Campaign of World War II, History of Prussia, Italian Unification Wars, Risorgimento, Albigensian Crusades, and much more. Click the link in the description or pinned comment to get the exclusive videos, early access to all public videos, our schedule, wallpapers, access to a special Discord server where we're very active, and much more. Thanks for supporting us, we couldn't be doing it without your help. After securing the throne of Macedon, Demetrios began making moves to consolidate his rule. In 294 BCE, when he heard that Lysimachos had been taken captive by the Thracian Getae tribe while campaigning in Getae lands, he set off to take Thrace. However, before Demetrios reached the region, messengers told him that Lysimachos had been freed, so he turned back to deal with a revolt by the Boeotians and the Thessalians, who had taken advantage of his leave to rise in rebellion against him. Demetrios managed to put down these rebellions by laying siege to Thebes. This exposed his Thessalian territories and allowed Pyrrhos to invade, but Demetrios managed to expel the Epirot king as well. After taking Thebes, Demetrios founded a city called Demetria, and then married Lenassa, the Syracusan ex-wife of Pyrrhos. This marriage represented a further decline in the relationship between Epirus and Macedon. After stabilizing his Greek territories, Demetrios returned once more to Athens, which was now eager to accept the resurgent regional hegemon with garlands. In order for the democratic city to accept a king, they revived the idea that Demetrios was a god, depicting him as a son of Poseidon in connection to his naval supremacy in battles like Salamis. After securing Athens' obedience, Demetrios returned to Macedon, before descending south once again, this time to Aetolia. This further escalated tensions between himself and the Pyrrhic king of Epirus, who saw Demetrios as encroaching on his sphere of influence. The fighting with Aetolia and later with Epirus ended in 290 BCE with a peace treaty. This, however, did not mark the end of the conflict in the Greek mainland. In 289 BCE, Demetrios fell ill, and then faced another invasion by Pyrrhos, which he managed to repel. However, in 288 BCE, Lysimachos and Pyrrhos, with help from Ptolemy, decided to finish things and invaded Macedonia with an overwhelming force, splitting it between them and forcing Demetrios to flee. Demetrios fled south with his family to Greek territories that they hoped would remain theirs. Over the despair of watching her beloved husband face defeat, his first wife, Phila, took poison and died, a devastating loss for a man who had already lost much of his family in these wars. Seeing Demetrios' foundation of power dissolving beneath him, the fickle citizens of Athens revolted against him once more, and Demetrios responded by besieging the city. The Athenians held on until Pyrrhos arrived to assist them, forcing Demetrios to flee once more. Even after these strings of defeats, Demetrios was always seeking another fight, so he left his southern Greek possessions to his son Antigonos II in Corinth and went to Asia Minor to seize control over Lysimachos' territories. Our record here becomes very sparse, as Plutarch provides us with little detail of any battles that occurred during these campaigns. It seems that initially Demetrios was successful against Lysimachos' son Agathocles, and was negotiating with various successors. However, while recovering from illness in the city of Cataonia, he was ambushed by Seleukos. Demetrios tried to get out of the region, but he was blocked by the Seleukid forces and fled to the city of Kehestica, hoping to stir up a rebellion against Seleukos there. When this failed, he moved to Afrin for a final battle, and then tried to attack Seleukos under cover of night, but the commotion in the enemy camp caused fear in the troops and compelled them to retreat. A fight ensued the next day, but when Seleukos proclaimed that any Antigonid troops would receive pay and safety if they went over to his side, many of Antigonos' mercenaries defected to the enemy. Demetrios once more turned tail with what few allies he had left, but there was no escape. Hiding in a forest, Demetrios unsheathed his sword to commit suicide, but his friends prevented him from doing so. Instead, he surrendered to Seleukos, who treated him with royal honours. Despite his request for a small realm to rule, he was sent to the Chersonese, where he lived, hunted, and exercised in royal parks with his allies. In his mercy, Seleukos allowed Demetrios to live, despite calls by Lysimachos to have him executed. The reason for Demetrios' survival, according to Plutarch, is Stratonike, now married to her ex-stepson Antiochos I Soter. Antigonus II begged, alongside many Antigonid city officials, to surrender everything to Seleukos in exchange for the freedom of the besieger. However, it was not to be, and Demetrios abdicated the throne. His son would continue his dynasty with great honour. Demetrios sank into depression and alcoholism, dying in 282 BCE. Demetrios was ambitious, if at times reckless. However, he was shrewd and very brave on many occasions, and truly lived up to his father's name. The Antigonids were strong because of Demetrios, and their tactical skills would appear many times over the next century. Antigonos received his father's ashes in a gold urn and gave him a royal burial in Demetrios. After the neutralization of Demetrios, the web of alliances between the surviving Diadochi began to shift once again, beginning when Ptolemy died in 282 BC in Alexandria of natural causes. This was a rare event for a general of Alexander, as most died in court intrigue or battle, as we've seen. Ptolemy II Philadelphos succeeded his father's pharaonic throne. Ptolemy I, whose title was Soter, meaning saviour, was a man who preferred to work in his sphere of influence, and was always keen on securing it. This drove a lot of his foreign policy, though as his occupation of Phoenicia shows, he could also be an expansionist. His Ptolemaic dynasty would rule for centuries, initially being steadfastly proud of their Hellenism and rejecting the customs of the native Egyptians they ruled over, but slowly incorporating pharaonic and Egyptian elements in their rule over time. After Ptolemy's death, relations between the most powerful actors in the Hellenistic world were tense, but it was court intrigue in Lysimachos' Thrace that sparked the embers over the dry kindling. The polygamous king's new wife was Arsinoe, daughter of Ptolemy. Since marrying Lysimachos, she had borne 3 heirs that were lagging in the line of succession behind Agathocles, who was the son of Lysimachos and Nicaea, daughter of Antipater. Lysimachos, who was in his 70s alongside most of the surviving Diadochi, was informed by his younger wife Arsinoe that Agathocles was conspiring against him. We do not know if this was true, or if Arsinoe was lying to secure her son's presence on the Greco-Thracian throne, but both could have been true. Consequently, Lysimachos murdered his son, as well as many of his allies in the court. This caused a mass exodus of the Agathoclean faction, including Agathocles' wife Lysandra, who was also of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and a certain Ptolemy Karaunos, who was her brother. Karaunos was a candidate for the Ptolemaic throne, but had fled after Philadelphos became the favourite. This faction of the court fled to Persia to seek refuge with Seleukos. Through their arrival, Seleukos saw an incredible opportunity to expand his realm, and perhaps make it as great as that of Alexander. However, we are unsure of the Greek Shahinshah's true ambitions. As the instability in Lysimachos' court began to spread to the rest of the empire, his possessions in Asia Minor, like Pergamon, began to drift away from Lysimachos' grip. It was because of this that Seleukos decided to invade the region in 281 BCE. The old general left Antiochos I Soter to rule in his stead in Asia, and then moved on from Babylonia and into Asia Minor. In Pergamon, Seleukos was received by Phileteros, a lieutenant in charge of the city's considerably wealthy treasury. Seleukos accepted him as a vassal. Thereafter, the region slowly gained independence as the famous Kingdom of Pergamon, ruled by the Attalid dynasty. The campaign was fast. Seleukos easily took some of Asia Minor, causing Lysimachos to rally his troops and move into the peninsula to drive out his foe. The two armies met in the Battle of Corupedium near Sardis in the winter of 282 to 281 BCE. Virtually nothing is known about this battle other than that it was a resounding victory for Seleukos, and that Lysimachos died in the battle. The final strike is recorded as having come by a Heraclean soldier called Malanos. After Lysimachos' demise, Seleukos was now the undisputed grand champion of the wrestling match that was the Wars of the Diadochi. He thus crossed the Hellespont and went into Greece for the first time in decades. He was in his 20s when he left, and like Antigonus and Ptolemy, he had made his home amongst foreigners he ruled over. Seleukos' goal was to move into Macedon and take control of it, but then lightning struck in the form of Ptolemy Karaunos. Ptolemy organized an assassination attempt and murdered Seleukos, killing the last of the Diadochi and dawning the age of the Epigoni, or the heirs of the Successors. Seleukos had proven himself to be a prudent ruler, which had secured his rule over Babylon and then Persia. He was also tactically brilliant, as his successes in the east show. His dynasty, the Seleukids, ruled most of the Hellenistic world and hybridized Greek and Persian cultures like no other, before slowly withering away. After eliminating Seleukos, Ptolemy Karaunos went to Macedon with a diadem and then declared himself king. But his luck would soon run foul. In the north, Celtic tribes were beginning to descend upon Hellas, and beginning to chip away at the kingdom. Ptolemy died in 279 BCE, and the Celts fought with various Hellenic states until being defeated by the son of Demetrios, Antigonus II. Thus they moved to Asia Minor and set up a Celtic kingdom that lasted until the coming of the Romans. The Antigonids returned to the throne of Macedon and ruled until the Romans conquered Greece, something we have discussed in our previous series. The new era had finally been born, the Hellenistic Age. As the wars have now ended, let us take stock of the geopolitical landscape the Diadochi left in their wake. The Ptolemies in Egypt were very much consolidated and had begun their grand project of building a Greek-centered rule over the proud Egyptian people. They slowly built Greek settlements and expanded the city of Alexandria, becoming a naval Silk Road hub. They used Hellenic culture as a quasi-colonial force upon Egypt, but slowly took up more Egyptian characteristics. They fought many wars over Phoenicia and Judea with the Seleukids, and tried to control Cyrene to their west, which lasted until the Battle of Actium. Meanwhile, the Lysimachian heir, Ptolemy Epigonos, tried to claim the Macedonian throne, but failed, ending up in Egypt. His kingdom was split between Macedonian and Seleukid dynasties, as well as small statelets like the Thracian kingdom of Bithynia. The biggest of these, the Attalids in Pergamon, became a wealthy cultural hub. The rest of Asia Minor became a battleground between the Kingdom of Pontus, run by Greco-Iranian dynasties like that of Mithridates the Great, who was famous for fighting the Roman general Pompey, and other small statelets that emerged, like the Kingdom of Commagene, which also merged Greek and Persian religions. Over in the Greek mainland, the Antigonids ruled over Macedon and had various phases of oscillating control over the rest of Hellas in various wars. In the century after the Diadochi Wars ended, the Roman Republic slowly appeared in the region and eventually overtook and annexed Hellas. As for the Seleukids, they built a massive empire over the Near East and Persia, and constructed local social networks with local elites to keep control over that vast land. Slowly, and in wars with Scythians and Parthians, Persia came under the control of the Parthian dynasty or other local rulers. In the Far East, one of the satraps of the Seleukids, Diadochi I, broke off and founded the Greco-Bactrian kingdom in modern Afghanistan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. The history of this kingdom, mostly known through coinage, is known for both wars with nomadic tribes, but also for prosperity, and cities like Iconium, where Greek and Persian architecture merged in elite houses. The southern part of the Greco-Bactrians broke off in the 2nd century BCE. It formed the first of many Indo-Greek kingdoms, which ruled over Taxila, where Porus once ruled, and even fought wars with Indian empires like the Shunga. All of the easternmost Hellenic kingdoms merged Indian, Greek, and Persian cultures, and were eventually overrun by the Indo-Scythians, Indo-Parthians, and Kushans. Ultimately, the Hellenistic era, which began with the Wars of the Diadochi, continued until the conquest of Greece by Rome. Alexander's last words, "to the strongest," ended up causing 40 years of fragmentation and titanic clashes. It was an era of colonial tensions, where Greeks ruled over many foreign peoples. However, it was also an era of cosmopolitanism, where Greeks and foreign peoples mingled and made hybrid innovations in philosophy and culture. This era lasted as long as the wars had, with constant conflict and crumbling empires. And yet, it also included the glories of the cities of Alexandria and Antioch, of Taxila and Ai-Khanoum, without which some of the most important developments in Eurasia would not have occurred, from Hellenistic Judaism and early Christianity to Stoicism and Epicureanism. This was an age of beauty, cosmopolitan mixing, and cultural production, which is best summarized by the Persian Timurid poet Hafiz, who, living in a similarly cosmopolitan world, says in his poem, A New World, "As dust, O west wind, let us rise to the heavens, floating free in Creator's glow of elation. If mind desires to return while heart cries to stay, here's a quarrel for love's deliberation. Alas, these words and songs go for naught in this land. Come, Hafez, let's create a new generation." More videos on the history of ancient Greece are on the way. To make sure that you don't miss them, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. It helps immensely. Our videos would not be possible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.